All right, Aaron, if you can hear me, let's go ahead and bring Ian and Gideon up from Bright Minds Biosciences. There we go. I'm going to get off the screen because I don't know what the heck's happened with my computer. I'm going to let you gentlemen take it away. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much. It was very interesting listening to that last panel on the future of psychedelics, and that couldn't have been a better segue into what we're doing. I'm Ian Mcdonald. I'm CEO and co-founder of Bright Minds. So my background really quickly was in investment banking and venture capital. So started off my career forming companies, helping them grow, and making sure that they had the capital and team in place to take them to the next level and help them grow and blossom into what they could be. From there on, I went into, again, what the last panel was discussing, which was mergers and acquisitions and investment banking. So that is something that I bring to the table around, call it 2014, 2015. I started getting interested in the serotonergic field and really taking a holistic view of the space and taking a look at the mental health care drugs that have been in place, the true lack of innovation. If you look at the standard of care today, that would be SSRIs. Those SSRIs, like Prozac, for example, are 30-year-old drugs. They work for some of the people, some of the time to a degree. They work generally quite well for people with, I would say, less severe cases of depression. But there's been a real lack of innovation in neuropsychiatry in the at least last 30 years. So why has that been? I think the main issue is there's been a lack of new ideas. There's been nothing groundbreaking. And what this serotonergic field and psychedelics more specifically do is truly revolutionary. The efficacy is certainly there. I don't think anyone can doubt that if you're taking a look at the recent MAPS data or many of the other studies that have come out. One thing is undeniable, that these drugs do work. The issue is with these first generation psychedelics, and when I say first generation psychedelics, I'm talking about compounds like psilocybin, MDMA, LSD. While they're effective, they lack a lot of the drug-like characteristics necessary for them to be truly embraced, not only by doctors and physicians, but also by big pharma and the traditional healthcare establishment. And what Bright Minds really set out to do was, instead of working with those older compounds, we are developing the next generation. So we're tuning out those rough edges. We are making those first generation molecules something into a more final form, or a form that can be used by a wide array of patients for a number of different neuropsychiatric and neurology indications. I will turn it over to, I think, one of the smartest guys in drug development, in psychedelics and serotonergic drugs, certainly that I've come across, and that's my co-founder, Gideon Shapiro. And he can go into a bit of his background and run through some of the science and what we're up to at Bright Minds.
Thanks, Ian. So I'm Gideon Shapiro, like Ian said, VP of Drug Discovery, Bright Minds, and basically started my career at Sandoz Pharmaceuticals in Switzerland, where Albert Hofmann, I had the pleasure of seeing him speak at the company, and discovered LSD and moved my career essentially initially at Sandoz in Switzerland, Basel. So essentially been leading drug discovery efforts, starting my career there, but it has since transitioned for the last 10 years, most relevantly into Rugen and a Fidelity company that was involved in neuroscience and neuropsychiatry, as Ian said, trying to address this really need for new mechanism, new breakthrough, and a new fresh look at neuropsychiatry beyond dopamine, which has been the last 50 years. And in there, we really have gained the insights in working on next generations to ketamine, which is essentially the first and only, at this point, approved, if you will, psychedelic drug. So this drug has created a paradigm shift that really is the perfect launching point for what we're doing at Bright Minds in serotonin. So with ketamine, that's an NMDA mechanism psychedelic, versus the new generation, which really has even more promise. And we're trying to use those insights now from the past 10 years, and the research with ketamine is very analogous to the breakthroughs that have to be made in 5-HT psychedelics. And those are the following. So if you get to the next slides, to slide 4, you can see that the first generation, as Ian said, it's super exciting. They are effective. That's no issue. The problem is always with first generation drugs, there's some significant limitations in terms of efficacy. They are efficacious, but to reach broad patient populations, there are safety concerns. So the first generation, psilocybin, all of them, LSD, they have significant cardiovascular toxicity risks, number one. And so what that means is you can take currently 2 doses, but for long-term treatment to reach large patient populations, you're going to need a safer generation of drugs. This involves basically the drug design engineering experience that we have at Bright Minds and have done before for numerous other projects for other targets. That's number one, and probably the biggest thing. The next is that for patient compliance, the trip time or the duration of the psychedelic effect, you're going to want to get to be more patient-friendly and also for treatment center friendly. So the LSD is almost very difficult. That would be a 12-hour duration. And psilocybin itself has on the order of 6 hours. So the other key goal for patients is to get the trip time down to a short, manageable experience where then they can go in and be released by the therapist in a reasonable short time. Potentially 2 hours, for example, would be an optimal target. And third of all, really to reach large patient populations for this to become mainstream is what we all want. We want psychedelics to move to essentially mainstream regulatory and broad patient access on top of that. And to do that, you also need intellectual property defense that will enable big pharma to have the profit incentive to invest behind these drugs, the billions of dollars that are needed to really deploy them widely for example, in the major depression market, we're talking about millions and millions of patients, and so that potential will have to be realized by expensive trials as well. So that's what we bring to the table. We've assembled a team of experts to do that. We have intellectual property in the company already, so we're very well positioned to actually have the alignment of these factors. So it's really a great situation where both the patients and the economics are aligned, and the profitability aspect of this. So those are really key to really make medicine broadly accessible, and that's what we have at Bright Minds. So that involves essentially making and drug engineering to do that. How do we do that? We have to take the currently existing molecules or lead compounds and engineer them. That's basically a molecular process now. Now we know how to do that. We understand which the targets are, the quote molecular targets of psychedelics. Quite simply, there are essentially 3 flavors of receptors that the psychedelics act at. They're called 5-HT2 receptors, and there is a 2A, 2B, and 2C. Essentially what we have to do is tune out the cardiotoxicity, which is mediated by a 5-HT2B receptor, and maintain this 5-HT2A receptor. So that's what we do as drug designers. We engineer, tweak the molecules, we create compositions of matter that are then better second-generation drugs. So in addition to that, there's a way to basically tweak the duration of action. You need the kinds of scientists and team who can do that, who are pharmacokineticists who do that. And then you need to create the IP. So we've ticked all the boxes here in this program. And on the next slide, basically, you see sort of a schematic of how these things are targeted. So essentially what you have are these 3 buckets. The psychedelics you want to hit and really engineer and target towards the brain with this 5-HT2A. The molecules have to be tuned out to eliminate this effect on the cardio heart valves for that toxicity. And then there's another receptor that's also sort of an offshoot of psychedelics called the 5-HT2C that's well established for other neuropsychiatry indications of impulsivity. So what we at Bright Minds have is a pipeline then of compounds that basically attack the 5-HT2A receptor for psychedelics, and the 5-HT2C gives us another pipeline. So in addition to being, a next generation of drugs, we actually are able to have a pipeline to address different conditions and target them.
Next slide. Sorry, could we go back to slide 5, I believe? It should be
probably slide 3.
Oh, slide 3, yeah. So a lot has changed between the 1960s and now in terms of technology. In the 1960s, very, very little was known about the brain relative to today. There are 14 different serotonin receptors in the brain. That was only elucidated in the 1990s. We've had a number of other technological breakthroughs, including X-ray crystallography, so you're actually able to see what the structure looks like, what that receptor structure looks like, and then be able to design around it. Molecular modeling, which is a fancy way for saying having a computer mimic that compound fitting in the receptor site and fine-tuning that. And then finally, Fmri, which is just brain imaging. Now, why has no one done this yet? The answer is because it's very, very difficult. The 5-HT2A, the 5-HT2B, and the 5-HT2C are almost identical. And to design a drug that hits one and not the other is, many people in this field thought it was impossible for a long period of time. We looked at that as a challenge, starting years and years ago, probably around 2010. Our third co-founder, Alan Kozakowski, spent millions of dollars and years of research working with another very famous neuropsychopharmacologist named Brian Roth at University of North Carolina to do just this. Alan isn't here today, but he's certainly much smarter than I am. He has 500 publications over his belt, studied under a Nobel Prize winner at Harvard. He is a wealth of experience. He's been involved in designing brain drugs for the past 40 years. And he's really foundational to what we've done at Bright Minds. He's certainly not the only one, but he's a very large piece of it. Gideon, could you walk through the rest of our team and why they're important to this,
Sure.
to this goal?
Sure. So our Chief Medical Officer, Vati Srinivas, has deep experience in developing. That's really key to how you design your clinical trials. So that piece is really essential. As we move through the pipeline, fundamental aspect of the drug discovery, in addition to the drug design, the chemistry part, which we have a very strong team there. Obviously, we just talked about. Really, the is also beyond the design that then confirm works and to have the molecular pharmacology. So we're really blessed to have John McCorvey, who really is in the pedigree of psychedelic pharmacology coming from Nicholas's lab and also Brian Roth at UNC. So these are recognized leaders, and you have to be able, as Ian said, to tease out the selectivity for the different molecular subs, and that's what John is, the leader in the field. So when we design and make these compounds, we need to be able to determine that selectivity and that it's perfectly targeted given receptor subtype. So that's really just a fantastic team. Beyond that, we have in vivo, the leading in vivo pharmacologists in the world, I would say, for psychedelic activity to show these things work in animals, and then to transition to humans. So we're really well positioned that the drugs we do find and design do what they need to do, so that we go into the clinic that we're actually pretty confident of success. So you really need a team of veterans and experts in this field. It's very specialized, and we've assembled, I think, one of the best teams out.
Can we go to slide 6, please? And just to walk you through our pipeline here, I'll let Gideon do it.
So to start, we're blessed with intellectual property from the get-go. We have patent protection from previous work that was in license Alan had done at University of Chicago. And that's this 5-HT2C subtype, which is now undergoing a real revolution to treat infant epilepsy disorders. That's now recognized with the approval of fenfluramine in this area, which also needs improvement. So we're going to Dravet's. That's scheduled to enter the clinic early next year in the Q1, Q2 of 2022. And then for the right behind that, we have our psychedelic lead program, essentially for major depression is the key, really crown jewel market of psychedelic development is well recognized as depression. So those clinical paradigms are established with psilocybin. So we're really in a great position, essentially, on the heels of psilocybin to come up with the next generation drug that will be efficacious and have advantages in terms of safety. That's basically our position to enter our pipeline into development. We're very excited.
Yeah, and those two drugs will be in clinical trials early next year and mid next year. We're going to be doing a phase 1. Start off with a phase 1 study, and then we will be doing a small proof of concept phase 2 study immediately after that. So look forward to us having phase 1 and some phase 2 clinical trials next year. Moving to slide 7, I'm going to blaze through the rest of this since we're running out of time. These markets are very large. If you look at major depressive disorder, we believe with an on-patent drug, you're looking at roughly a $600 billion market. All of the markets we're going after are billion-dollar markets. Next slide, please. A major point here that I want to emphasize is, in order to really make money in pharmaceuticals, you need to have an on-patent drug. An on-patent drug, the price for an on-patent drug in an indication like depression is anywhere from, call it $15,000 on the low end to $35,000 on the high end. For a generic drug, that's about $400 per patient per year. So call it a 40x for on-patent versus generic. Meaning that if you're Compass or MindMed, you're selling your drug for $1 after your exclusivity period is expired. Whereas us with an on-patent drug, you're looking at $40 for that same, or 40x for that same indication, for that same medication. I think what really separates us from our competitors, apart from our science, is the value in our stock at the moment. We are under the radar. We don't spend a lot of time going out waving our arms. We're really focused on science and have a team to certainly back that up, and compounds to certainly back that up. So I would look at that valuation gap closing materially quite quickly. Not only have myself and the other members of management invested significantly in this company, so have some of the top investors in the biotech arena. I think we'll go to questions.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely have time for one here. What do you think will end up happening long term in the space regarding big pharma? We got about a minute left.
Gideon? I should just say, Gideon speaks from a place of authority. He spent his last 7 years creating the science for a company developing a second generation version of ketamine, who did 2 big pharma deals. Sorry, go ahead, Gideon.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing, we're quite surprised, but big pharma is very interested early. I think you've seen that in some of the earlier presentations. There's a lot of excitement even for preclinical stage, and clearly big pharma is now recognizing the space. So we see partnering heating up, and again, the companies that have IP are the ones that big pharma is searching for. So among the companies, I think we're at the top tier of companies that have IP that's issued already. I think we're the only one actually that has an issued patent that's already enforceable in the space. So we're sort of at the top from the end, for sure. We're in the clinic, we'll be in the clinic, and then we have IP behind it. So really the key is intellectual property that sets us apart, and that's what Big Pharma is looking for, and we're seeing a lot of interest.
Fantastic. Ian, Gideon, we are at time, but super interesting presentation. You guys are obviously on the precipice of something special here at Bright Minds. So is there a website we can reach you at?
Yes, brightmindsbio.com. We're traded in the States under BMBIF and in Canada under the ticker DRUG, DRUG.
Fantastic. I will say the OTC ticker should be correct, right, Ian? Okay,
yeah.
Fantastic. All right, so the OTC ticker is right there. Gideon, Ian, again, thank you all very much for being here. Awesome presentation. I look forward to touching base with you all down the road and seeing what milestones we've hit. But we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.